So my country is Norway, and so today we're going to be becoming globally competent on Norway. So first, I wanted to include the location. Norway is in the north of Europe, as you can see. It is the red country right here. And then shoot, sorry. Um, and then Norway borders Sweden and Finland. And then on the left here, you can see the seas that they border. To the west is the Norwegian Sea, and to the south is the North Sea. Oh, perfect. Okay, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about the topography. Norway is completely in the Scandinavian mountains, and then the top right is called a fjord, which is basically a deep glacially caved sea inlet, and these are mostly on the western coast. The climate is pretty cold as it is very north, but on the western coast, it's mild, wet, and maritime as Norway has the largest border on the sea. Um, and in Europe are one of the biggest in the world. And then as you get more inland towards Sweden, it becomes cold, continental, which is snowy winters and warm summers. And then northern Norway, as we saw before, borders the Arctic Circle. Let me show you. The Arctic Circle is right there, if you can see. So the very top of Norway is in the Arctic Circle, and that's where we get on the bottom left, uh, midnight sun, sorry, and polar night, which is the Northern Lights, which I'm sure most people have heard of. And then I kind of wanted to talk about the language. So the official language is Norwegian. There are two written forms of Norwegian. I'm going to butcher those names, but the first one that starts with a B is the standard Norwegian, and then the second one that starts with an N is the New Norwegian written format. A minority language is Sami, and this is spoken by the indigenous Sami peoples, which are in the north of Norway. The second most spoken language is English. Around 90 to 95% of the population speaks some English. Um, Out of 116 countries according to one of my sources, it is number two in being the most English proficient. This is because they start getting taught English very young. It's kind of another universal language for them because not a lot of people speak Norwegian, so they need it for business, tourism, etc., all of those. So uh, English is very important in Norway. Then I kind of want to talk about religion. As of 2024, 63% of the Norway's population is in the Church of Norway, which is Lutheran, Protestant, sorry. And then 30 to 32% has no religious affiliation. One thing throughout my research is that this group of secularism in Norway is the largest growing group in Norway. There's a huge wave of secularism and non-religious affiliations within the country. 3 to 4% are other sects of Christianity. For example, Catholicism. 3 to 4% is Islam, and then less than 1% is other religions such as Buddhism or Hinduism. Food traditions and pop culture. First, I wanted to start with popular food. To the right is rakfisk. It's basically fermented fish. I read that it's very much of an acquired taste. I've never tasted it. Not 100% sure if I would like it, but it's a very big part of their culture. And then I also added two more that again I'm probably gonna butcher the name, but the second one is dried fish treated with lye, often served during Christmas. Um, and then Norwegian meatballs with brown sauce, potatoes, and lingonberry jam. So a lot of maritime seafood because of their huge border, and then also potatoes. Traditions. The 17th of May is their national day of celebration with parades, traditional clothing, and lots of ice cream. Midsummer is bonfires by the fjords and late night sunlight, so midnight sun. And then pop culture, I really wanted to bring up the fact that Norse myths are everywhere, from Marvel's Thor to video games like God of War and Assassin's Creed. Um, the more you look, a lot of Norse myths really uh, influence pop culture that we see today. So yeah. Um, I also wanted to give kind of a brief history. So the Viking Age, 800 to 1050 AD, Vikings explored, colonized, traded, and raided all across Europe and northern Africa. Um, Vikings, I think, tend to have the stereotype that they were just barbarians, but they're also farmers and just normal people who lived in Norway during the Viking Age. The Vikings colonized a lot of cities, such as they did find Dublin, Ireland, and then what the area of Normandy, France is today. From 1380 to 1905 was the Kalmar Union. Norway was unified with both Denmark and Sweden until their independence in 1905. Um, there was a huge swipe of nationalism throughout Norway during this time because they felt that they were very subordinate to Sweden and Denmark within this union, and that it was not helping or being the union was not aiding them anymore. So it's basically a majority vote to leave the union. And then Norway during World War II, Norway was occupied by Nazi Germany. The resistance movement played a large role in the liberation of the state. Um, Norway's resistance movement played. It was basically Norwegians who would relay information back to the Allied powers through espionage, and then also a lot of sabotage with destroying Nazi military infrastructure, such as buildings, etc. Basically, just doing what they could, even while under captivity of the Nazis, to help for the greater good, and that did lead to the liberation of the state. Lastly, I kind of want to talk about the modern oil boom, which is post World War II. Norway discovered offshore oil. This transferred Norway into one of the wealthiest countries in the world. That's because they really took, once they found the oil, they got businesses and such to come explore it, thus making Norway lots and lots of money. So then I kind of want to talk about communication. The kinesics. Norwegians tend to be very straightforward and restrained with their emotions. They're not as blunt as other Western countries, though. They try to say with a little more face. Some emblems. The OK hand sign used in many English-speaking countries is offensive in Norway. It can mean zero or worthless here, so be careful using that if you're ever in Norway. And then also pointing at someone can be seen as offensive or condescending. Their paralinguistics. Norwegians tend to talk in a calm and collective manner and want decisive and clear communication, which we'll talk a little bit about later. Um, Norway's conflict style, they have a discussion style, which basically just means they're very restrained in their emotions and have direct communications. Direct communication, this is very well seen in very westernized countries such as Germany and the US. Okay, let's talk a little about Hall's cultural dimensions. So, for the first one, chronemics, which is basically how a culture deals with time. Norway is very monochronic, which basically just means they see time as linear. Schedules are important. Punctuality is important. Delays are looked at as disrespectful and unprofessional. So keep that in mind if you're ever doing business with these people. Number two, Norway is very much of a low context culture, meaning communication is explicit, direct, and straightforward. There's little reliance on nonverbal communications such as body language. And then clarity and precision are vital and very valued in this culture. Lastly, Norway is very much of a low contact culture. For haptics, which is touch, a handshake is preferred, different from warmer cultures that we see in Southern Europe, such as two kisses on the cheek. For here in Norway, it's definitely much more preferred, just a simple handshake. And then for proxemics, which is space, Norway values more of personal space, and for intimate space is more for romantic partners, close friends, and family. So again, never can go wrong with a simple handshake. Um, okay, so for Hofstede's cultural dimensions, Let's start with power distance. So Norway scored very low on this. Norway values equality, flat hierarchies, and no authoritarian figures. Employees expect to be consulted when businesses are making big decisions, and leaders are just seen as coordinators rather than huge overlooking authoritarian figures, as we said before. For individualism versus collectivism, Norway scored high on individualism. Uh, Norwegian society values individual rights and personal autonomy. People are expected to take care of themselves, personal opinions are valued, and also personal privacy is very much valued. On the scale of femininity to masculinity, Norway scored on very feminine. Their values include cooperation, quality of life, and caring for others. And success is important, but not for status or competition. Um, Uncertainty avoidance. Moderate, they tolerate uncertainty slash ambiguity, and they're relatively comfy with change. Long-term orientation, they scored low on this. They focus on Norway tends to focus on shorter term goals, and they want to preserve the past, but also at the same time adapt for the future. And then lastly, for indulgence, Norway scored high for this, basically just meaning that they value leisure, freedom of expression, life satisfaction, and satisfaction, sorry, and personal happiness. Basically the same thing that we said, that they scored very high on femininity. And then lastly, I kind of wanted to talk about Trumpeteers, 7 cultural dimensions. So for number one, we have universalism versus particularism. Universalism is rules and laws apply to all, no favoritism, strong belief in fairness and consistency. Individualism versus communitarianism. They scored in between. Though individual rights and autonomy are valued within this culture, there's strong focus on social welfare, teamwork, and equality. For neutral versus emotional, they scored neutral. Emotions are wanted to keep under control, and calmness and modesty are cultural norms and valued. Kind of what we said with their conflict style being discussion. For specific versus diffuse, Norway scored specific. Professional and personal life are kept separate. Achievement versus description, they value more achievement. People earn respect through what they do, not who they are, who they know, and credentials and experience matter. Um, Sequential versus synchronic. Norway is very time sequential. Basically, like I said before, time is structured and punctuality is important, and they very much tend to plan and follow schedules to a T. Lastly, internal versus external control. Norway believes in internal control, which basically is people believe they can control their environment through reason and effort, so they can make a difference within their life and their work. So yeah, thank you for listening. I hope this helped you understand Norway as a culture and as a country better. And yeah, perfect.